All right. You're joining with the first of a new study. This is going to be a study in the book of Joshua. This study will be just an introduction to the book. It will not get into the book yet. But here's an important verse that we have in the book. Be strong and of good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. Now that was a statement to Joshua himself. And that's the basis on which we will be studying the book. But we're just preparing in this study to study the book of Joshua. We've got to understand the background from God's perspective. God is alive, well, and active. Or I should say, is God alive, well, and active? The Bible, what is the Bible? Does it show the acts of God, or is it just men using God's name as an excuse for doing evil things? Are God's promises real? Does God keep his word? Now, we're going to answer that as yes. But I have to ask, do you live as if God is alive and well and active? Do you live as if the Bible is telling us the truth? Do you live as if God's promises are real? Do you live expecting God to keep his word? If you don't, you're saying no with your life. I want us to know who is in charge. The same God who created all, owns all, and sustains all. He's alive and working today. He's doing the same as he did with Adam, with Abraham, with Moses, and others. But how does that relate to us? That's important. We'll begin with our relationship to the events, and we'll go to God's promise, and then we'll follow some of God's actions through the years. Anyway, an outline of what we're going to look at. We're going to start with God's promised land, and then we're going to God keeps his promises, and we're going to see some of that. This is about God demonstrating his power against against evil. That's what the book of Joshua is about. It's about God demonstrating his power against evil. He made demonstration of his power before his own people so that they would believe. People should bring glory to God. But we'll see that Israel didn't always do that. We'll read a long passage that was written to a church about why we need this book, why we need the Bible. And that passage, remember what I said, it was written to a church. It's about Israel, but it was written to a church. It was written to a church with a lot of problems. We're going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, starting with verse 1, so you'll need your Bible for this. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We'll read down through verse 15, and then we'll skip to verse 22. It says, Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But many of them God was not well pleased. But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things were examples to the intent we should not lust after evil things, as they also lusted. Neither be idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. Excuse me, I've still got my cough. Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed, and fell in one day 23,000. That's 23,000. Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed of serpents. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyer. Now all of these things happened unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Now that's the verse that we're going to be triggering off of. So let's read that again. Now all these things, that's verse 11. Now all these things happened unto them, unto Israel, for ensamples or examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. Excuse me, my fingers are dry. I didn't want to turn the page. Wherefore, my dearly beloved, verse 14, flee from idolatry. I speak as to wise men, judge ye what I say. I speak as to wise men, judge ye what I say. And then skip down to verse 22. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Oh my, what a section there. Now I like to teach verse by verse. Joshua is a tough book. It's assumed by some to be the works of men to excuse some evil work and to blame God for that evil work. But the questions, are we idolaters as Israel was? Are we serious about the way we live? These are serious questions. Do we recognize the miraculous work that God is doing in our daily lives? Joshua was about cleaning up an adulterous and idolatrous land. Israel became just like them, unfortunately. They were there to clean it up, and they became just like them. Church, don't do that. That's what this passage was saying that we were reading. This was written as an example for us. Let's go back to 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 11. We'll hit this verse several times in this study. Verse 11 says, Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples. The things happened unto the people in Joshua's time and in Moses' time and in the time of the judges and in the time of the kings. Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Folks, we need to recognize that these are examples for us to look at, to see how God acted. So, let's get into it. Genesis, we're talking about God's promised land. Genesis 13, verses 14 and 15, says, And the Lord said unto Abram. Now, remember, Abram was the name of the man whose name was changed to Abraham. So this is before his name change. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, lift up thine eyes and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. The last part of those verses, to thee will I give it. God says he's going to give to Abraham and his seed the land of Israel. We just make that simple. To thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And just reading that verse again, substituting some for the pronouns there, to Abraham will I, God, give it, that is the land, and to thy seed forever. How long is that? Forever is kind of a long time. That's what he says, forever. Does that suggest a two-state? Excuse me. Let me get some water here. Does that suggest a two-state solution for Israel? I don't think so. Folks, it's going in the wrong direction there. All right, we're going to read another passage here, Genesis chapter 17 and verses 1 through 8. It says, and when Abram was 90 years old and 9, that is, he was 99 years old, Hebrew counts these numbers. They put the tens and put an and the ones. So when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared unto Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect. And I will make thee a covenant, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. This is where he changed his name. For a father of many nations have I made thee, and I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee, the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Again, here we see that God is going to give the land to Abraham and his seed, as from an everlasting covenant, or according to an everlasting covenant, and for an everlasting possession. And God was still talking to Abraham, but this is 20 years later, and he's got more to say. Go to Genesis chapter 21. It says, And God said unto Abraham, Let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of thy bondswoman. He's talking about Ishmael here. Let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, because of Ishmael, and because of the bondswoman, that's Hagar. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Now, it's important that we recognize that the covenant passed from Abraham to Isaac only, not to Isaac and Ishmael, only to Isaac. There was no promise, or there was a different promise that passed through to Ishmael. But a step further, going to Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. So God, speaking to Isaac here, says, sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless thee. And for unto thee and thy seed will I give these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. So he's speaking to Isaac, saying that the land is going to be his. Then let's go to Genesis chapter 28, and starting with verse 10, let's read. Genesis 28, verse 10. And Jacob went out of Beersheba and went unto Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night. And because the sun was set, he took of stones of the place and put them for his pillow, and laid down. I hate to have a stone for a pillow, but he had a stone for a pillow and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder. You heard of Jacob's ladder. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascended and descended on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. So here he's talking to Jacob, and he's promising that he's going to give the land to the seed of Jacob. And of course, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So the promise was, first of all, to Abraham, then to his seed, that is Isaac and Jacob. And let's be straightforward. We're talking about the land of Israel. It's not going to the church. It's not going to Palestine. Now, the name Palestine is kind of an unusual thing. We're not sure where that comes from initially. We know that the Romans called the area Palestine, but the people there that they were calling Palestinians were Jews, Christians, and Arabs. Anybody that lived in the land was called a Palestinian. But the earlier promise had nothing to do with Palestine. Let's read Genesis 12, verses 1 and 2, and then we'll go to 3 and 4. It says, Now the Lord hath said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto the land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. God reached around Abraham's pagan ancestors and led Abraham into a great covenant. Anyway, let's look again at God's promise that he had in these verses that we just read. It says, "And I will bless thee, and I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse him that curseth thee." All of this is background for the book of Joshua. You know, our nation is rapidly forgetting who we are and why we are so blessed. After World War II, nations felt sorry for the Jewish survivors of Europe, and particularly the survivors of Germany. But Satan tried to exterminate the Jews. You know, if Satan could destroy the Jews, he would destroy the prophecy of God. But he cannot defeat God. So the land was appointed to the Jews. Before World War II, the Jews were in the land. Now, some people think the Jews didn't get to go to the land until 1948, after the UN established the charter there to call them into the land. But there were Jews in the land all along. And Jews were buying land. That mostly they were buying swampland because that's all they could buy. That's all that the people of the land would allow them to buy. But as they bought swampland, they planted trees. And many died of malaria as they were doing that. But they were planting trees to dry up the land. In 1947, UN Resolution 181 gave the Jews control of the land, and that was to start in May of 1948. Who in general are those that are cursing Israel today? Well, most of us blame the Muslim nations and the supporters of the Muslim nations, like Russia, so forth. But the Muslims started from a highwayman named Muhammad. Most of you know this. He was not a religious man, but he claimed to be a descendant of Ishmael. And if you go back there and read the story of Ishmael, you will see that God said that he would be a wild man. And man, that's what we keep seeing out of the Muslim nations. Anyway, his followers, that is the followers of Muhammad, claim that Abraham's promises were to him because Ishmael was the firstborn and he's a descendant of Ishmael. Anyway, Satan would love to disrupt God's promise, but he's not going to be able to. The UN resolution didn't set well with the Arab people, and war was waged in the years of 1948 and 49. In May the 14th, 1948, Israel declared themselves an independent state. And after that declaration, the fighting intensified from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, from Egypt, and from Saudi Arabia. Finally established an armistice in February of 1949. And here we have a picture, and I hope you can see this. First thing that we should note here is the entrance of Joshua into the land. He entered approximately in this area, just north of the Dead Sea, crossing the Jordan River and into the Promised Land. This green area in 48-49 was considered Arab territory. Actually, I think Jordan is the part of the rulers of that, but the PLO was established to run that. Then we've got Gaza over here, and we've heard about Gaza a good bit in the news lately. Anyway, with all of the fighting going on, the blue area here is initially what was assigned to Israel by the UN Charter in 47, but they added in up through 49 this pinkish area here. They added all of this to to the nation of Israel. With with the armistice, Israel gained 1,900 square miles. 1,900 square miles. And I will bless thee. Those that curse him, he will curse. And they lost 1,900 square miles. Anyway, the armistice only stopped the organized armies from fighting. Suicide bombers replaced them. And there were still some pretty bad things going on there. USA, America, was one of the first to recognize Israel when they declared themselves to be a state. But we were just coming out of World War II, and so our recognition was pretty much just a morale builder. The neighboring states opposed anything to do with Israel becoming a nation. But who got blessed and who got cursed by the wars that were going on? Israel gained territory. The neighbors lost territory. Recognize that some of the opponents maybe should have been eliminated by Joshua back there in the time that we'll be studying his book, because he didn't quite complete the job. But still, new nation. Israel was a new nation. New army. Defeated the older nations with established armies. I will bless thee. Who do you think is in charge? A lot of deaths in that. God could have just zapped and had it all done, but that's just not how he chose to do it in this case. Still, 1,900 square miles gained. I will bless thee. Then in 1956, 49 armistice was signed. 56, we added again. Egypt removed international control over the Suez Canal. They shut off access to Israel for getting things through there. And they shut off access for Mideast oil to go to Western countries. The canal was owned by a British and French company, and so they weren't too happy with what was going on there, and were pretty much secretly supporting Israel. But the U.S. President Eisenhower, tried to work a deal there, but the time he was more concerned about Russia and what Russia was doing, and so Israel didn't quite get the attention and didn't get that resolved. So war broke out. The population in 1949 was about 1 million, and by 1958 it had grown to 2 million. So quite a population boom there. Part of the crisis in 1956, Arab nations solidified with Egypt against Israel. They planned full destruction of Israel. They put 465,000 troops on the border of Israel. They had 2,000 tanks in place in the Sinai, ready to go after Israel. And they had over 800 military aircraft ready just to bomb the stuffings out of Israel. So with roughly 500,000 troops on the border against 2 million civilians, women and children, as well as the men, but all bets were toward full annihilation of the Jewish state by these people. Israel didn't wait. That little Israeli Air Force at that time surprised Egypt and destroyed the enemy Air Force in one morning. They went out and they just bombed the stuffings out of the Egyptian Air Force. And they went with civilian buses. Can you imagine civilian buses running out into the desert? They was civilian buses went after the enemy tanks in the Sinai Peninsula. Britain and France joined Israel, and the United States was still working with diplomacy. Didn't get anywhere, but they worked with diplomacy. But after the 1956 war, here's what happened. Israel gained all of the Sinai, part of Egypt. They gained the West Bank and the Golan Heights. Now, the U.S. forced them to give that back, the parts that they gained there. But they had demonstrated great power in conquering those. And the UN placed troops on the borders to keep things quiet and calm. You hear of problems on the at Gaza right now. These UN troops, excuse me, I'm sorry. I feel fine, but I just have this cough. Anyway, the UN troops were supposed to keep the border secure. But whose land is all of that? North and south and east and west, Abraham was to look, and all of it was to be his. They've never occupied all of the land that was given to them by God. I think they will one of these days. But is God in control? 465,000 troops and tanks and military air force. And little old Israel stomped them, just stomped them. And I ask the question, are the Jews ever going to expel all of the wicked, including their own? Let's go to Genesis chapter 13 and verses 14 and 15. It says, "And the Lord said unto Abram after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever." Abraham was near the Dead Sea when Lot separated from him. Lot went to live in Sodom. Ugh, bad choice. But Abraham was to look north, south, east, and west. All of it was his. But again, Israel has never occupied all of it, yet at least. Remember the promise. "And I will bless thee, I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee." We're just preparing to enter into the book of Joshua. But think about who is in control. 1967, 56 war, 67 war, 6-day war. Egypt decided to block the Suez Canal again. This time, they not only blocked the Suez Canal, but they blocked Israel's port at the Gulf of Aqaba. That's at the southern end of Israel, place where they could get products out. But the Arab nations, again, aligned with Egypt. UN forces that were there were sent home by Egypt. Israel quickly recaptured the Sinai Peninsula, including Gaza. They warned Jordan to stay out of the war. Jordan didn't listen. So Israel captured the Golan Heights, West Bank, and Jerusalem. They really wanted Jerusalem, so they captured it. Here's the 6-day war. And I'm having trouble with my arrow here. It's getting buried underneath the, there we go. Okay, here we see that this area here this is the West Bank. It was controlled by Jordan at the time. Israel went in and they conquered Sinai, Egypt here, conquered the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and, of course, Jerusalem. There's Jerusalem right there. Anyway, with that, all the odds were against Israel for getting anywhere. But I have to ask you, is God alive? Is God working? Let's go back and read 1 Corinthians 10, verse 11 again. Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Folks, these things that we're going to be reading about in Joshua and the things that continue on today, these events that we're pointing out are today's events. Is God alive and working? 1973, Yom Kippur War. Egypt and Syria caught Israel off guard. The holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, is a Sabbath in Jerusalem. Now, I visited Jerusalem and was there on a Sabbath day, and I saw the young men and young women in their military uniforms just enjoying themselves, walking from store to store, seeing what they could see. No large groups of them. I don't know how in the world they could get their army together. And the thing that happened with Gaza recently is a demonstration of the fact that they have a hard time getting them together when they're just off enjoying themselves. But anyway, in 73, holiest Sabbath, they were attacked. The people were praying. They were praying for themselves. No thought of war. Egypt and Syria, supported by Russia with weapons, and finally the U.S. got involved and started helping Israel. Saudi Arabia led an oil embargo in this. Don't think Saudi Arabia is lily white, as some might tell you. Anyway, Israel gained 165 square miles out of this. Not as much as they did in the earlier wars, but 165 square miles. And I will bless thee, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. Recently, of course, Israel was attacked from Gaza. The UN forces there were not able to contain that. Somehow they blocked the Israeli defense from recognizing what was going on. We don't know the full outcome of that yet, so I can't speak too much to it. But it looks like Israel is really doing quite a job there. Anyway, the U.S. and France have given the greatest support to Israel. We have disappointed leaders of Israel at times, but we're still friends. Is God working today? I want to give you a different set of numbers perspective as to seeing God worship today. We're going to look at the GDP per capita as a way to evaluate the economies of these nations. Now, I've got two sets of numbers here. This is GDP per capita for each of these nations in 2014 and 2022. 2023 is not out yet. So you that might look at this later will be able to look that up. But anyway, you see that Israel's GDP per capita increased. 2014 was the first time I taught this. So that's the reason I have these numbers. But anyway, you can see the increase or decrease of each nation over these years. And Israel had a fairly nice increase over those years. And their numbers are pretty high. U.S., of course, is much larger, but our numbers are not that much larger. Anyway, you can see that the U.S. economy gained. France, not quite so much gain, but definitely a gain. Look at Egypt. Egypt's numbers are roughly 10 times less than those of Israel. Egypt is a much bigger country and 10 times less than that of Israel. They made some gains, but it's way down there. Then Iran. Oh, look at Iran. Iran went down in their economic situation, even with America giving them the billions of dollars. But again, way down below that of Israel or America or France. Iraq, again, way down, and their numbers went down. Lebanon, north of them. I don't know what that zero is all about, but that's the numbers that are listed in the thing, in the GDP numbers. They're busted. Wow, what a situation. Now, God keeps his promises. I've got a personal story I want to tell you, and I know I've told this story before, and maybe you've heard it, but let me tell it again because it fits into this just real well. I worked for Northrop Corporation for a while. We got 2 Bible study groups going there, and monthly we had films that we would show for evangelistic purposes to share the gospel with people. It was known who the active Christians were because they went around inviting people to these various films that we had. Also, while I was working there, the adult education system in the local area was offering a study of Hebrew, and I decided I might as well, add to my Bible study capability. And twice a week I was going to class there for a few months anyway. But I went into Northrop on a contract, and they were expecting a follow-on contract, but they missed it. They lost the contract. So they transferred me to another group. They transferred me to a drone project group, and I was bounced between various groups there. Anyway, my boss came to me one day and told me that he had a new project that he wanted me to go on. It was a project to build an airport for Saudi Arabia. Well, you've seen the history of Saudi Arabia in our things there, and I recognize I had 6 kids and a wife to support at the time, but I couldn't work on that project. I spent some time praying and so forth, studying, before going back to my boss. It was just the next day that I went back to him after he asked me to get on that project. And I quoted Genesis 12, verse 3 to him. I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And explain that Saudi Arabia didn't have a history of blessing Israel, and that I was just not going to be able to work on that project. Well, at Northrop, as with many large companies like that, people are reviewed annually as to how they have performed. And most of the year I had worked in the initial group that I was in, and only just a very short time in the new group. But the divisional director called me to meet him in his office. Now, he was what we would consider kind of a higher mucky muck. I had never met him before. But he called me to his office, and the first thing he wanted to know was why I couldn't work on that project. So I explained to him why I couldn't work on that project. I told him that I was a Christian and that the Bible said in Genesis 12:3, and I quoted that to him. Anyway, he came back and said that Saudi Arabia was a moderate Arab country, and that our nation had approved the job, and that our company had worked hard to get the contract, and that I was being disloyal. Because of that, I was never going to get a promotion or a pay raise out of the company, except for the fact that he was given my annual review from the other group, the first group I joined. And he had to read that to me. I'm sure it was painful for him to read that, because it was, it was a glowing report. But again, he said I was never going to get another pay raise or a promotion there, and he was going to put something in my personnel folder that would keep me from doing so. Okay, I still could not work on that job. And so I decided it was time to at least put out some feelers to see if I could find some other work to do. Well, I was invited to interview with a company called Data Products, who built printers for large companies, large printers and small printers and all kinds of things. Anyway, they were a very large printer manufacturer. I went to interview with that company, and the manager came out to the lobby area and introduced himself as Amnon Evan Kesef. Now, I listened to that name and I said, "Where are you from?" And he proudly said he was from Israel. And I said, "Atam Adaber Ivrit?" That is, do you speak Hebrew? And his eyes opened and his jaw dropped. And he wanted to know where I had learned Hebrew. And I told him in Hebrew that I only spoke a little bit. I had just been taking Hebrew for a few months and just knew a little bit. Anyway, he wanted to know who my teacher was. So I told him my teacher's name. And he said that he had to finish a phone call before he could actually spend time interviewing me, and asked me if I would excuse him for a few minutes while he did that. Now, I didn't know what he was going to do, but later found out what he did was he went and he canceled all of my interviews with all the engineering people. Canceled them all. And he set up interviews with the Israelis that were there. Every one of them wanted to know why I was studying Hebrew. I got to tell every one of them about Jesus on an interview. Oh, how many of you interview like that? They didn't care whether I knew anything about the work I was doing. They just wanted to know why I was studying Hebrew. Anyway, the second piece of that was by me giving him my teacher's name. He had immigrated, he and his family had immigrated with her and her family together from Israel. They'd bought houses adjacent to each other. They went to synagogue together. Now, is that a coincidence? It didn't matter what I knew about the work. I had a job with another pay raise. Now, I'd just gotten a pay raise from Northrop, from my initial boss, and here I'm getting another pay raise to go to this new job. Anyway, coincidence, right? God at work. Anyway, from there, I had to plan how I was going to tell my bosses, that I was leaving Northrop. And I was very hesitant about that because I was leading the Bible study groups. I didn't want to leave a bad taste in people's mouth about Christians. I really wanted to quit on as good of terms as I could. I had pretty well lost my footing there because of not working on that job. But anyway, I planned that I was going to let them know on Friday. This was earlier in the week. I was going to let them know on Friday that I was leaving. And I was planning to give them 2 weeks' notice. Well, I was diddling around that Friday morning trying to get up the courage to go see my boss. And lo and behold, I got a call to come to the director's office. Okay, so I didn't know what he wanted, but I went to the director's office. He had a piece of paper in his hand, and he started reading the paper to me. They were letting me go. They were laying me off. And they were going to give me 2 weeks severance pay. And they were going to give me insurance money for a period of time. Anyway, this director was just as happy as could be because he was getting to get rid of me. And I was so happy. I didn't have to give my speech. I didn't have to quit. I just was given a few minutes to get my stuff together and get out of that plant. And I will bless them that bless thee. What a job. We've got a great God. Now, that's only half the story. The rest of the verse says, "And curse him that curseth thee." Now, I had a need to drive by the facility where I worked because I needed to go to a place directly across the street from it. And it was a UPS office, and I needed to go there to pick up a package. Anyway, I went there and I looked, and the beautiful facility that I had worked at, it was a full group of buildings with all kinds of laboratory facilities and so forth. It had a launching pad for drones to take off. It was just all grown up in weeds. It closed. That Northrop facility was closed. Guess who didn't get another raise at that facility? Now, I don't know what happened to the director, whether they moved him to another spot or what, but he didn't get another raise at that facility. I will curse him that curseth thee. God promised Abraham a land. Now, that land is to go to Israel, not to the church, not to Palestine. There are no expiration dates on the promise. That promised land is forever. Men have tried to prevent the occupancy of Israel into that land. But America has been blessed because we blessed Israel. But we need to stop the moral decay in our land, or we'll suffer from that. In 1947, UN Resolution number 181 established Israel as the one to occupy the land. And then in 1948, Israel declared themselves to be an independent state. Wars have happened ever since then. But Israel has always gained from those wars. And then we talked about my personal experience. 1 Corinthians 10:11 says, "Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples or examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come." We will be getting into the book in our next study. But this is an introduction to get us ready for it. Do you want to be blessed? We dealt with only one of God's promises. But if you want to be blessed, find one of his promises and stand on it. Obey the things that have to do with it. But God is alive, well, and active. One of his promises is that of salvation. And I bring up salvation in every one of my messages, almost. Romans chapter 10, verse 9 and 10 says that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness. Man believeth unto righteousness, not he does righteousness, but he believeth unto righteousness, and with his mouth confession is made unto salvation. One more verse I'd like to read is 1 John chapter 5, verse 13. It says, "These things have I written unto you that believe on the name of the Son of God, that you may wonder, hope, yes, no, listen to this. These things have I written unto you that believe on the name of the Son of God, that you may know that you have eternal life, and that you may believe on the name of the Son of God." Thank you for being with me. The book is an example for us Folks, we need that book. We need to be studying the book of Joshua. So we'll get started with that in our next study. Thank you for being with me.